Good evening and welcome to Save Your Sanity, Help for Toxic Relationships. I'm Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. Tonight we're going to be talking about circular conversations. They're crazy making, and you know exactly what I'm talking about if you have found yourself in relationship with a hijackal, one of those relentlessly difficult people that I call hijackals. These are the folks who hijack relationships for their own purposes and then relentlessly scavenge them for power, status, and control. And one of the ways they do that is through the circular conversation. Starts out as though it could be pleasant, ends up in anything but pleasant. Are you familiar with that? I just bet you are, because if you've ever been with one, you know precisely what I'm talking about. So I was thinking about a movie from 1984, and it was called Gremlins. And I don't know if you've ever seen it, and I don't recommend that your children see it, but if you've seen it, you might remember a few things about it. There was one side, and these little creatures, these gremlins. There was the benign, pleasant, fun, cute little gremlin called Gizmo. And then there was this nasty, horrible creature with sticking up teeth and a nasty face called Stripe. And these were the alternate sides of the gremlin clan, if you like. And, you know, one of the things that happened to Stripe was the woman in whose home they were, she caught Stripe looking in a blender and she turned it on. And that's where it gets nasty and you don't want your kids to watch it. But, you know, I was thinking about the fact that getting into a circular conversation with a hijackal is a lot like being invited into a blender. Because you're going to be enmeshed. You're going to be tightly together. You're going to be irrecognizable one part from the other for a bit. And of course, you're spinning in a circular direction, and the speed can vary. So we know that that's true. How fast are we going? How bad is it going to get in any circular conversation with a hijackal? And they're always involved in it. It's just the different speed, right? Man, you can get very caught up in one of these conversations. You know, when people talk to me about PTSD or CPTSD, which is complex PTSD, I'd say the difference is in PTSD, you have one or two very traumatic incidents that everybody could recognize as a traumatic incident, and it deeply creates that trauma within you. But when you have CPTSD, it's like death by 10,000 paper cuts. It's just this little slight and that little slight, and not being able to ever relax and all of that. And that is one of the things that happens when we enter a conversation with a hijackal. It may be circular. In fact, if there's going to be anything beyond the weather and what time to pick up the kids, it may very well mostly be circular. So it keeps spinning. There is no point at which you honestly can believe that if you step on into it, it won't spin. You hope it won't, but you don't believe that it won't spin. Now, sometimes the blender's turned off. Oh, what a relief. And you think everything is cool. But always remember that you don't own the blender. You are not in control of the switches, and you are not in control of the power cord. So you may be thinking, oh, it's silent in here. It is so wonderful. Everything is fine. Everybody's loving each other. This is great. I will enter the conversation, and pretty soon you're whirling out of control. So just thinking about that. The difference between the Gizmo and Stripe character that a hijackal can be. And then think of your children watching that. Am I going to get the nice one, or am I going to get the really nasty, scary one? How do I know which one I'm going to get? Well, you never know. And when you're a child, you really don't know. So if you grew up with that uncertainty, and then you find yourself in a romantic relationship or supposedly romantic relationship with a hijackal, that'll be super familiar. And one of the things that circular conversations produce is that thing I did a whole episode on, which is so important to realize, is reactive abuse. Because once you get in that blender and you think it's just a nice ride, it can accelerate at any time, and that will scare you or catch you off guard, or it'll feel really unfair, and then you will start to spin too, and maybe then you will engage in reactive abuse. And you know how quickly reactive abuse, meaning you have been triggered so much that you react, you know how quickly the finger gets pointed at you to say, you are the abuser. Circular conversations are part of that dynamic. So we want to be very, very clear about this. You may feel like you're in charge of the blender. You are not. You do not own it. You did not plug it in. You don't have dominion over the settings. So be careful. You can't unplug it because it's the hijackals blender. So be wise about that. You don't want to get sucked into a conversation that's going to go badly for you. You don't want to even get into one that seems benign, and maybe you feel, oh, this is so nice. I've been waiting for this. I feel like I could tell my partner anything. And so you do. And what they're really doing is fishing for your vulnerabilities to use them as ammunition later. And so the hijackal asks you a question and you give them a full answer, and then boom, the blender roars to life because it was a trap. Is this sounding familiar at all? It could very well be that you are just going, whoa, yes, I get taken in by those conversations all the time. And I so much want to believe that we're going to have a lovely conversation, that it's going to be equitable. And it will never be equitable. You know, I talk about that in episode 115, the 3 must-haves of a healthy adult relationship. You must have, most basically, equality, reciprocity, and mutuality. And if those are not present, and they are not present with a hijackal, they don't have them to offer, then don't expect them. You know, that's a big step in understanding what's going on in this relationship that's causing you so much pain, is you expect them to behave the way you would. And they are not going to do that. They are not going to play nicely. And it's important to give up that expectation that you can love them enough, provide enough stability, work hard enough, keep them in the style to which they're accustomed or want to be accustomed. And heaven knows there are enough hijackals who refuse to work, so you end up doing that. And you want to see that for what it is, because these circular conversations go nowhere. You know, you got a lot of spin in that blender, but the blender never leaves the house. And they don't go anywhere. And the second big principle is somebody's keeping the score, and it's not you. So they're engaging you in these conversations only to get more and more ammunition to weaponize against you. And you'll have the same argument over and over and over with no resolution. How many times have you had that same conversation that turns into an argument that ends in everything being your fault or you not being up to par, but nothing was resolved? Because they want to have another circular conversation about that. You know, my mother used to do that because every now and again she would, I think she just was sitting there feeling inadequate, so she'd bring up a topic over which she thought she had full power over me. I didn't know why she started the conversations, not till I was about 14, and then I figured it out. But I thought she wanted to talk to me, and I was so starved for attention from her. I thought that was great. Maybe you had a mom or a dad who behaved that way, and then everything turned sideways, and it didn't have the result that you were hoping for at all. If any of these things are sounding familiar to you and you'd like to talk to me, just go to beaclient.com. That's where I offer my 1 hour new client one time 1 hour for $97. Beaclient.com. Love to talk to you. And if you're finding value in this podcast, please consider making a donation and supporting the show at patreon.com/saveyoursanity. And big shout out to all the people who are doing that on a monthly basis. I so appreciate it, and so do people around the world, because our show goes to over 100 countries and you're keeping it on the air. So thank you so much for that. So these circular conversations, after a while, you kind of just lose track of what's being said. Like, are we going there? Or, oh, now we're over here, and now it's wrong over here, and you never did this, and you always do this. And pretty soon you can't keep track. And if you find yourself unable to keep track, know that the hijackal planned it that way. This is very much on purpose. The hijackal doesn't want you to keep track because they want to be in what they consider to be the superior position. So they will turn a simple fact or a request, which seemed quite normal and benign, into something heated and blaming and shaming and going nowhere good pretty quickly. And then they'll be out for blood. Can I hurt you by something I say, or something that I put you down with, or I remember something differently, or I change the narrative, or I tell you that you're worthless. And then they will keep spinning the conversation. And your task is to stop the spin cycle and leap out of the blender. Now, I know that's not easy. But, fortunately we have bodies, and every now and again we have to take a bio break. And maybe that's the way you get out of it. Or you have to go and get the mail, or look after a child, or something. But when you feel the spin start in the conversation, have somewhere to go and something to do. Now, that's not going to be a popular move, because I'm talking to you. Get right back here. I'm talking to you. But you're an adult. So you're not going to get right back there and they're talking to you. Now remember, if a hijackal ever restrains you, always have that ability to call the police. Because they like to keep you in the conversation, and they like to trap you in the room. And the ones who are likely to do physical damage are the ones who begin that way, holding you, or making it so you can't get out of a room, or you can't reach your phone. So be careful of those things. I'm not going to talk any more about that in this episode, but watch for all of these pieces that I talk about. When you go to For Relationship Help on YouTube, you'll find that there's over 680 videos there for you. You can do a search, find what you need, and listen to that, so that you understand that there are ways to get out of the blender. There are ways to stop the spin cycle. Remember, too, that these conversations on the part of the hijackal are planned. It's their plan to manipulate you. So, come into my lair. I will pretend I want to give you a hug. I will pretend I want to talk to you. I will pretend I want to solve a problem. And then when you get there, you find that they're not in any way intended to do those things. They're intending to use coercive control to take over your thoughts. They will gaslight you. They will put you down. They will, in other ways, belittle you, degrade you. They will dismiss you. All of these things will happen. But the circular conversation is, if I don't like this topic, I'm going to the next one, and I will find another and another and another. I will always be able to have the spin of the word salad. Those things that you spin a salad in? Well, think about that with all the words, the hijackal, and they're just there spinning, spinning, spinning. I can go in this direction and that direction, the other direction, and it's almost like playing whack-a-mole. They're going to stop you. They're going to stop you. They're going to stop you, and they're going to guide you directly to where they want you to go. And, I've heard it said that it's word salad. I've also heard it said kind of disgustingly, but it's the truth. It's verbal vomit. And that's very messy. And they'll do it. They will talk and talk and talk over you, and louder and heavier. And they will get more explicit and more coarse and rough. And they'll engage in name calling, anything to have the win. They're always going for the win in the moment. And everything ends at your fault. Did you notice that? These circular conversations, when they slowly come to an end, it's like, it's your fault. And you knew it was going to go there. You knew you didn't have a chance of getting out without it being your fault. So the deal is, do your best not to get in, so you don't have to worry about getting out. You know they're going to change the story. You know they're going to change the narrative to make themselves the hero or the victim or the teacher, the one who knows, the one who's put upon. They're always going to do it to their advantage and to your disadvantage. There's no natural give and take in the conversation, no natural communication and connection when you're talking with a hijackal. It's not the way their mind works. It's not the way they think about relationships. And one of the big things that's difficult but so worthy seeing is they are not like you. No matter what you do, they will not be like you. You can show them an example of love and attention and patience and giving, and all else they'll be thinking is, whoa, I wonder what else I can get. They're not like you. So when you actually allow yourself to realize that the hijackal's wiring is not like your wiring and not like most healthier people's wiring, then you depersonalize it. It's not about you. It's about them and their wiring. Whew, that can be such a relief. That can be such a moment when, they're always blaming me, but it's about them. It isn't about me. No. They want to make it about you, but it isn't about you. It's about them. It's a big, big moment. And their deal is to keep you on edge, like right on edge, on the edge of your last nerve, preferably. So they feel that at any point you're easy to tip over. So let's talk about what happens in these circular conversations. And maybe you'll hear a few things that you can identify. Yeah, that always happens. I hadn't realized that that's the dynamic behind it. So I've written a few things down here to share with you. So what happens in the circular conversation with a hijackal is that you try and be reasonable, and you keep asking them to be reasonable. Nope, because to them, that's you trying to tell them how to be. You're being saying, well, let's do this calmly. Let's just have a nice give and take. I'd like to know what you're thinking and feeling. And they're not having any part of that. There is not going to be that reasonable conversation because they don't have the willingness or the ability to have an equitable conversation that you are going to meet on a level playing field. They can't stand that. As soon as it feels like you may be level, they immediately have to up the ante. They can't take it. Equality is not something that they are going to entertain. And when you really understand that that's the case, they are not willing or able to entertain equality. Sometimes that's a big moment because you stop looking for it. You stop having an expectation that if only you do this, or if only the world changes on its axis, everything will be fine. It won't. It's not going to change. And that is so devastating because you've invested time and attention, or you have children, or you have a business together, or all these things. But the sooner that you realize that it is important that I recognize that this is not going to change, the sooner you can do something about it. And again, if you want to talk to me, go to beaclient.com. We can talk for a whole hour. So important stuff. Another thing that happens is you try to teach them to play nicely, and they have no interest. And not only that, they resent your teaching. They resent your tone, even though if you don't have one. And they resent what they call you being their parent. You may have heard that right from their lips. Who do you think you are? I don't need a mother or a father. And that happens when you have this circular conversation. And another thing happens is you blame yourself for not expressing yourself well. Even before they get to blaming you, you may already be blaming yourself. Oh, if only I could do this better. If only I had the words. You know, they are purposefully not understanding you. A, they have no interest in understanding you. But B, they're quite capable of hearing the words and understanding those words, but they're not interested. So you're expressing yourself and you are doing a good job. It's they who do not want to listen. It's not that you're expressing yourself badly. It's that they take the circular route. Oh, I almost got caught there. I think I'll change the subject. And away the hijackal goes with the conversation again. Okay, so don't offer them ammunition. Don't be part of that. And again, you know, as I said about episode 115, the 3 must-haves of a healthy adult relationship: equality, reciprocity, and mutuality. And no, that is not available from a hijackal. Those are the 3 things they will not give you. And those are the 3 most important, most basic, most must-have things to have a healthy adult relationship. Another thing that happens is you feel constantly that you're in a verbal competition. You're always waiting to be caught out, somebody to one-up you, to tell you that you're wrong, that they're right and you're wrong, that you're dumb and they're smart, that you're worthless and they should be worshipped. You know, it's ugly stuff. But you are in a verbal competition all the time, and they don't want to understand you. So they will be very obtuse. They will simply play dumb. And you're sputtering over your words. I don't understand a thing you say. And besides that, it never makes any sense to me, and I don't know why I bother with you. You ever had that kind of a response? Or you get hurt because they're not interested in your thoughts or feelings or needs and wants. And you're absolutely right. They are not interested. And they'll accuse you of trying to take the focus when you say, but I just wanted to talk about this one thing. Be so good if we could resolve this issue. I'd just like to keep it to this one tiny thing. Could we do that? Why? It's always about you. You want to direct this conversation? Why are you doing it? Now we're going again for another spin. And you know that it'll always come back to the conversation, no matter how many turns it takes. It'll always come back to hijackal right, you wrong. So don't get your exercise going around that blender, because you know where it ends. And there will be no resolution, because only one person's feeling badly, and that's not the hijackal. The hijackal is happy that they have put you down, and they have not had to change, and they have not had to pretend to listen to you, and they have achieved dominance. And they will go round and round and round and accelerate with those cutting remarks. Don't get in that blender. And And they are the great topic switchers, truly great topic switchers. I found this great example from an article from the Covert Narcissism group. And they were giving an example. So it's Covert Narcissism group. And the example is this. He said, I've asked you to tell me what I'm doing wrong in our marriage, and you just won't tell me. She says, I've told you many times why I'm frustrated. I'm done telling you. He says, I've asked you to tell me right when it's happening. I think the problem really is you say yes, and yet you do not do it. She says, what does that mean? He says, you told me that you will point things out as they happen, and yet you don't do that. She says, I have pointed them out at the time, and that didn't work. So I tried an hour later, and that didn't work. I tried the next day, that didn't work. I've tried everything I know to try, so now I'm done trying. And he says, so you said yes, and you're doing no? Oh, you do that with everything. She says, now what are you talking about? And he says, I'm talking about the windows in the house. You still haven't gotten them done. You said you would. There you go. Couldn't win in one place, went around to another, try and come in the back door. Does that sound familiar to you? This switching of topics, can't have the win here, let me go for the win in another way. Again, a totally circular conversation. And these conversation circles are hard because the hijackal is playing hard done by, and you're being set up, and they're playing the victim, and you're getting nothing out of it except blame. It's an absolute no-win for you. So it's important to have something else to do. And it ends with them angry and or righteous and storming off because you are so impossible. And it leaves you confused and angry and frustrated and hurting and disappointed and lots of head shaking. So if this sounds familiar, recognize what's happening in this circular conversation and give yourself a little heads up. As soon as it starts to go around the first turn, excuse yourself. Say, love to talk to you about this, have to go. Have to do something. Now, if that won't work because it's late at night, maybe it's time to go to bed. I don't want to make it sound simplistic. I know it's difficult not to have these conversations. Remember, I've lived this too. But I want you to think about not stepping into the blender on purpose. When you stop to think about all these things I've spoken of, and you think about it in terms of your relationship, what are the red flags? What are you seeing that's unique to your relationship? What is actually happening? And when you see them, heed them. Be on top of it. For sure, see the patterns. Know that this is typical hijackal patterning. Know that. It's nothing to do with you. You're not doing a terrible job or being a terrible human. Observe them. They are the ones who are so desperate to be right that they are creating the circular conversation. And do your best to refuse to get into that blender. Use humor. Use whatever you have handy to be a reason why you can't talk just now. And in all situations, keep yourself as safe as possible and out of the way of the invitation to the blender. I hope this makes sense to you so that you can see these things clearly and that you can do something differently that would help you, that would give you some respite, that would make you feel like you'd reclaimed your power in life. Say, oh, not getting into that blender today. Just not doing it. And until we speak again, I hope that you treat yourself very, very well, because you're precious and you matter. Talk soon. Hello, good evening. Cosmo Cookie. Hello. Deborah said, I had 1,000 exhausting and soul-sucking conversations like this before I learned what was really happening from you and your podcast. I always thought it was me before. You're welcome, Deborah. So welcome, because you're right. Your words are great. Exhausting and soul-sucking conversations. Absolutely true. Keto Auntie. Where is a good place to get counseling from dealing with a hijackal and one for someone who can't afford counseling? Thank you for these helpful videos. Well, you're so welcome. Obviously, you can work with me. And if you can't afford counseling, come over and be part of my Emerging Empowered community. There you get 3 sessions a month with me in a group setting, as well as the whole group to draw on and talk with and interchange ideas and strategies, and a whole lot. Every week you get something new, something that's only for members. So it's a really good place to go. So come on over. Deborah says, yes, it's difficult to put into practice those disengagement strategies so you don't end up in the circular conversation, but peace it creates is worth it. Oh, it so is, isn't it? You know, getting to that place where you know for sure that you deserve peace and not the constant aggravation of what's going on right in front of you on a daily basis far too often. So important. Cosmo Cookies, love your podcast. Well, I'm glad you do. Thank you. There's so many episodes. This episode, I think, makes it really, well, the numbered episodes, this is 270, but there are a bunch of bonus episodes over there too. So always consider going back and listening to older ones. Yes, please, Keto Auntie, do look into the group. You can go there, joinintoday.com. Joinintoday.com will take you there. Now, you know that I keep track of the comments here, and it takes about 20 seconds from when you hit send to when I see it. And so if I haven't seen any new comments in 30 seconds, I feel like you're full up, and that you're going to go off and think about these things and you don't have any questions. And that may be the case. And that's just fine if it is. But I'm noticing that there aren't any real new things here. And it was a shorter episode, so maybe there's lots to think about and not many questions to ask. But I did want to give you that last opportunity to see if you have any questions. And thank you for the people who are pressing the super button and sending along a donation. That's always appreciated. It's delightful when people do that because it lets me know that you get value here. And that's what gets me up in the morning, flips my skirt, and floats my boat. I want to help you see these things and understand that you can, in fact, reclaim your power, rebuild your life, that you can recognize, release, and recover when you have been with the person who is insisting on being the one who tries to run your life. So, seeing no more comments, I'm going to say good evening and remind you again to take very, very good care of yourself because you're precious and you matter. Talk soon.